The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty main street of Las Cruces, New Mexico territory, as Nora Bennett struggled to maintain her balance on swollen ankles. Her hands instinctively cradled her 8-month pregnant belly while she squinted at the approaching stagecoach, praying that this time she'd finally make it home to her sister in Santa Fe before her baby decided to arrive. It was June 1878, and the relentless New Mexico heat made her cotton dress cling uncomfortably to her skin. Widowed just 3 months earlier when her husband's mining accident left her alone and with child, Nora had been staying with a distant cousin in Las Cruces. But as her time drew nearer, she longed for her sister's experienced help with the birth. "All aboard for Santa Fe," called the stagecoach driver, a weathered man with a gray mustache who barely glanced at the small crowd gathered around the coach. "Departure in 5 minutes." Nora approached the coach, ticket clutched tightly in her gloved hand. "Excuse me, sir. I have a reservation for today's coach." The driver looked down at her, his eyes immediately falling to her pronounced belly. His expression hardened. "Sorry, madam, can't take you." "But I have a ticket," Nora protested, holding it up. "I purchased it 2 weeks ago." "Rules are rules, madam. No women in your condition." He gestured vaguely to her midsection. "Too risky. What if you were to have your baby on my coach?" 3 days of rough travel isn't suitable for someone like you. "Please," Nora's voice cracked. "My sister is expecting me. I need to reach Santa Fe before the baby comes." "Not my problem, madam. You can have a refund at the ticket office." Hot tears of frustration threatened to spill from Nora's eyes as she watched the other passengers boarding. A businessman in a fine suit glanced at her with indifference. A young couple averted their eyes, embarrassed by her predicament but unwilling to help. "That ain't right," came a deep voice from behind her. Nora turned to see a tall man leading a magnificent chestnut horse. His face was partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat, but she could see the sharp line of his jaw, covered in several days' worth of stubble. He wore a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing sun-tanned forearms, dusty trousers, and a pair of well-worn boots. A gun belt hung low on his hips, marking him as one of the many cowboys who passed through Las Cruces. "She's got a ticket, don't she?" The cowboy approached the stagecoach, leading his horse. "Lady's in a family way and needs to get to Santa Fe. We don't take pregnant women this far along," the driver said firmly. "Too much liability. Stage company policy." "She paid for her passage fair and square," the cowboy insisted, his voice quiet but carrying a steel edge that made the driver shift uncomfortably. "Nothing I can do about it," the driver muttered, avoiding the cowboy's eyes. The cowboy was silent for a moment, then he turned to Nora. "Madam, where exactly in Santa Fe are you headed?" "My sister's home. Just outside the town proper. To the north." The cowboy nodded thoughtfully, then removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead. "My name's Finn Xavier, madam, and this here is Thunder." He patted the chestnut horse's neck. "Nora Bennett," she replied, uncertain what this stranger intended. "Mrs. Bennett, Thunder here is the steadiest, most reliable horse in the territory. He's gentle as can be, but strong enough to carry you safely to Santa Fe." Finn extended the reins toward her. "I'd be honored if you'd accept him for your journey." Nora stared in disbelief. "I couldn't possibly." "I insist," Finn said. "I've got business here in Las Cruces for a few days anyway. I can catch the next stage or ride with some cowhands heading north later this week." "But how would I return your horse?" "Thunder knows the way to my ranch outside Santa Fe. After you've had your baby and you're well enough, just let him loose with a note tied to his saddle, and he'll find his way home." The stagecoach driver cleared his throat impatiently. "Last call for boarding." Nora looked at the coach, then back at Finn Xavier's kind face. "Mr. Xavier, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take good care of Thunder and yourself, Mrs. Bennett." He smiled, and the genuine warmth in it made something flutter in Nora's chest despite her situation. This is too much kindness for a stranger. No such thing as too much kindness, madam, especially not for a lady in your circumstance. Finn adjusted the stirrups to accommodate her condition. Thunder's got saddlebags with some provisions. There's a canteen, some jerky, and a blanket. The trail to Santa Fe is well marked. You can make it in 4 days if you take it slow and rest often. "You'd walk all that way for a woman you've never met?" Nora asked, still bewildered by his offer. "I've walked further for less worthy causes," Finn replied with a slight smile. "Now, let me help you up." With surprising gentleness for his size, Finn cupped his hands to give Nora a boost. She hesitated only a moment before placing her boot in his palms and allowing him to hoist her onto Thunder's back. The horse didn't even flinch as she settled into the saddle, arranging her skirts as modestly as possible. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier." "I'll never forget this kindness," Nora said, feeling a strange reluctance to leave this generous stranger behind. "Safe journey, Mrs. Bennett." Finn stepped back, placing his hat back on his head. "Thunder will take good care of you, just let him set the pace." As the stagecoach pulled away without her, Nora felt a peculiar mixture of trepidation and excitement. She was about to embark on a journey alone, pregnant, and on a borrowed horse. Yet somehow, the genuine concern in Finn Xavier's eyes made her feel that everything might just turn out all right. With a final nod to the cowboy who stood watching in the dusty street, Nora gently nudged Thunder's sides, and the horse began a smooth walk northward, away from Las Cruces, and toward an uncertain future. Finn Xavier watched until Nora Bennett and Thunder disappeared from view, ignoring the curious stares of townsfolk. It wasn't every day a cowboy gave up his prized horse to a pregnant stranger, but something about the quiet dignity with which Mrs. Bennett had faced the stagecoach driver's refusal had stirred something in him. He'd recognized the look of someone alone in the world, fighting to survive. He knew that look well. 3 days later, Finn found himself thinking about Mrs. Bennett as he sat in Las Cruces' only decent saloon. Had she made it to Santa Fe? Was she safe? He'd finished his business selling a small herd of cattle faster than expected and was considering his next move when a commotion outside caught his attention. A rider was galloping down the main street, raising dust and shouting. Finn stepped outside with several other patrons to see what was happening. "Apache raid at the Simmons Ranch," the rider called out, reining his lathered horse to a stop. "They hit at dawn. 3 dead, and they've taken 2 women." The town marshal immediately began organizing a posse, and without hesitation, Finn volunteered. He needed a horse, which the livery stable owner provided a sturdy bay gelding that wasn't Thunder but would do for the task at hand. As the posse rode out, Finn's mind kept returning to Nora Bennett. The Simmons Ranch lay on the trail to Santa Fe. Had she already passed it safely, or had she been caught in the violence? The posse rode hard for hours, following the trail of the Apache raiders. Finn's concern grew as they passed areas where Nora might have camped. By nightfall, they'd caught up with the raiding party, and in the ensuing gunfight, they managed to rescue the 2 women from the Simmons Ranch. There was no sign of Nora Bennett, which Finn took as a good sign. She must have passed through before the raid. The following morning, as the posse prepared to return to Las Cruces with the rescued women, Finn made his decision. "I'll be continuing on to Santa Fe," he announced to the marshal. "Alone, with Apache in the area." The marshal looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Got business there that can't wait," Finn said simply. The truth was, he couldn't shake his concern for Nora. What if she'd had complications on the trail? What if she'd given birth alone somewhere between Las Cruces and Santa Fe? He'd never forgive himself if something happened to her after he'd encouraged her to make the journey. The marshal shrugged. Your funeral, Xavier. Finn set out at dawn, pushing the bay harder than he would have liked, but time was of the essence. He followed the Santa Fe trail, scanning for any sign of trouble or of a woman traveling alone on a chestnut horse. 2 days into his journey, with Santa Fe still a day's ride away, Finn spotted a thin column of smoke rising from a small copse of trees near a creek, a campsite, possibly. Cautiously, he approached, his hand resting on his revolver. As he drew closer, he heard it, the unmistakable whinny of a horse. Thunder's whinny. Relief washed over him as he urged the bay forward, but it was quickly replaced by renewed concern. Why was Nora still on the trail? She should have reached Santa Fe by now. Entering the small clearing, Finn immediately saw Thunder tethered to a tree. Next to a small campfire sat Nora, her face pale and drawn, her hands clutching her belly. Mrs. Bennett. Finn dismounted before the bay had fully stopped, rushing to her side. Nora looked up, her eyes widening in surprise and then filling with tears of relief. Mr. Xavier, why are you here? I was worried about you, he admitted, kneeling beside her. You should have reached Santa Fe days ago. The baby, she whispered, grimacing. The pain started yesterday morning. I couldn't continue. Finn felt a cold fear grip him. She was in labor, alone in Apache territory. Have your waters broken? Nora nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Last night, but the baby isn't coming quickly. I'm afraid something's wrong. Finn removed his hat, running a hand through his hair as he assessed the situation. Mrs. Bennett, my mother was a midwife. I helped her a few times when I was young. If you'll allow me, I might be able to help. Nora's eyes widened, but another contraction seized her, and she nodded through her pain. Please, I'm afraid for my baby. Finn moved quickly, gathering water from the creek, building up the fire and preparing as clean an area as possible. He washed his hands thoroughly and spoke in a gentle, calm voice as he examined Nora with as much modesty as the situation allowed. The baby's turned the wrong way, he said after a moment, his voice steady despite his concern. That's why it's taking so long. My mother showed me what to do in these cases. Can you help? Nora asked, her voice small with fear. Yes, Finn assured her, though he wasn't entirely confident. But I need you to trust me completely. This will be uncomfortable. Nora nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. I trust you, Mr. Xavier. For the next hour, Finn worked carefully to turn the baby, using techniques his mother had shown him years ago. Nora endured the pain with remarkable strength, following his instructions without question. Finally, with relief, Finn felt the baby shift into the proper position. You're doing wonderfully, Mrs. Bennett, he encouraged. The baby's turned right now. When the next pain comes, I need you to push with all your might. 3 exhausting hours later, as the sun began to set, a new cry pierced the air, the healthy wail of a newborn boy. Finn cleaned the infant with water warmed by the fire, wrapped him in his own clean shirt, and placed him in Nora's trembling arms. You have a son, Mrs. Bennett, Finn said, his voice thick with emotion. A strong, healthy boy. Nora gazed down at her child through tears of joy and exhaustion. Thank you, Mr. Xavier. You saved us both. Finn busied himself cleaning up and preparing a broth from his supplies, giving Nora privacy to nurse her son. When she was settled comfortably against a saddle he'd placed as a backrest, he brought her the broth. What will you name him? Finn asked, sitting across the fire from her. Nora looked down at her son, then up at Finn. I was thinking of naming him Finnegan after the man who saved his life. Finnegan Bennett. if that would be all right with you. Finn felt an unexpected lump in his throat. I'd be honored, Mrs. Bennett. Please call me Nora, she said softly. After what we've been through, I think formalities are unnecessary. Nora, Finn nodded, testing the name. And I'm Finn to my friends. They spent the night by the fire, Finn keeping watch while Nora and little Finnegan slept. In the morning, Finn constructed a travois attached to Thunder, creating a comfortable bed for Nora and the baby. We'll take it slow, he promised as he helped her onto the makeshift bed. But we need to get you and Finnegan to your sister's house. The journey took 2 more days, during which Finn and Nora talked constantly. He told her about his ranch outside Santa Fe, where he raised horses. She shared stories of her late husband, Thomas, who had been kind but whom she'd married more out of practicality than love. She confessed that, while she had cared deeply for Thomas, she had never felt the passionate love described in novels. My parents arranged the match, she explained as they made camp on the second night. He was a good man, steady and reliable. When he died in that mining accident, I grieved for him genuinely, but sometimes I wonder if there's something wrong with me that I never felt. More. Finn tended the fire, considering her words. There's nothing wrong with you, Nora. Some people are fortunate enough to marry for love. Others make the best of what life offers them. You honored your husband by being a good wife to him. No one could ask for more. Nora watched him over the fire, her son nursing at her breast. And you, Finn, have you ever been in love? Finn's hand stilled for a moment. Once. A long time ago. She married someone else, someone with more prospects than a cowboy with dreams of his own ranch. I'm sorry, Nora said softly. Don't be. If I'd married Ellen, I wouldn't have built my ranch, wouldn't have bred Thunder, wouldn't have been in Las Cruces when you needed a horse. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Wouldn't have been there when little Finnegan decided to make his entrance into this world. The air between them seemed to thicken, filled with unspoken possibilities. By late afternoon the next day, they arrived at the outskirts of Santa Fe. Nora directed Finn to her sister's modest home on the northern edge of town. Nancy Bennett Miller rushed from the house at the sight of them, her face alight with worry and relief. Nora, my God, we've been frantic. The stagecoach arrived days ago, and when you weren't on it, she stopped short at the sight of the baby in Nora's arms. Oh, Nora. Within minutes, Nora and baby Finnegan were settled in the spare bedroom with Nancy fussing over them both. Finn stood awkwardly in the small parlor, hat in hand, as Nancy's husband, George, offered him whiskey. You brought my sister-in-law safely to us and helped deliver her baby, George said, handing Finn a glass. We're in your debt, Mr. Xavier. No debt, Finn replied. I did what anyone would do, George chuckled. Giving your horse to a pregnant stranger, then walking across Apache territory to find her, then delivering her baby. That's not what just anyone would do, sir. Finn stayed for dinner at the Millers' insistence. Nora came to the table, little Finnegan sleeping in a cradle nearby. Throughout the meal, Finn caught himself watching her, the gentle curve of her neck, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her. When it was time for him to leave, Nora walked him to the door while her sister cleared the table. Your ranch is nearby, she asked, standing closer to him than strictly proper. About 3 hours' ride north, Finn confirmed. You're welcome to keep Thunder as long as you need. I can manage with the bay. When will I see you again? The directness of her question surprised them both. Finn hesitated. I don't know if that would be proper, Nora. You're a new widow with a newborn son. I'm asking when, not if, she said softly, her eyes meeting his with determination. A slow smile spread across Finn's face. I could come to town next Sunday, check on how Thunder is doing. I think Thunder would like that, Nora replied, a matching smile on her lips. And so would Finnegan. And his mother. As Finn rode away from Santa Fe that night, he found himself whistling for the first time in years. He'd gone to Las Cruces to sell cattle, and had somehow found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. Over the next several months, Finn's visits to the Miller home became a regular occurrence. At first, he came every Sunday, ostensibly to check on Thunder and little Finnegan. Soon, he was coming twice a week, bringing small gifts, a rattle he'd carved for Finnegan, fresh honey from his hives for Nora, flowers he'd picked along the way. Nancy and George watched the developing relationship with knowing smiles. Nancy had been worried about her widowed sister at first, but seeing the way Finn Xavier looked at Nora like she hung the moon and stars eased her concerns. Finnegan thrived under the care of his mother and the frequent attention of Finn, who would spend hours holding the boy, telling him stories about horses and cattle drives. By the time Finnegan was 6 months old, he would crow with delight whenever Finn appeared at the door. On a crisp October day, Finn arrived at the Miller's home with a different purpose in mind. He'd spent the previous night polishing his mother's ring, a simple silver band with a small sapphire that matched Nora's eyes. "Would you like to ride out to see my ranch today?" he asked Nora after greeting Finnegan with their usual game of peek-a-boo. Nancy said she'd watch the little one. Nora's eyes lit up. "I'd love to. Let me get my shawl." They rode side by side, Nora on Thunder, Finn on his bay through the golden autumn countryside. As they crested a hill, Finn's ranch came into view. A modest but well-built house, several outbuildings, a large corral with a dozen horses, and pasture islands stretching toward distant mountains. "It's beautiful," Nora breathed, taking in the scene. "It's not much compared to some spreads," Finn said, suddenly nervous. "But it's mine, free and clear. I built most of it myself." "It's perfect," Nora assured him, her eyes shining. They dismounted near the corral, and Finn showed her around the property, the barn he'd raised with help from neighbors, the springhouse where he kept milk and butter cool, the vegetable garden that needed a woman's touch, he admitted sheepishly. Finally, he led her to a small rise behind the house, where a single oak tree provided shade for a handmade bench overlooking the valley. "I come here to think," Finn said as they sat down, "when I'm troubled or when I need to make an important decision." Nora looked at him curiously. "And have you made any important decisions lately?" Finn took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Just one." He reached into his pocket and withdrew the ring, holding it in his palm for her to see. "This was my mother's. Before she died, she told me to give it to the woman who made my heart feel like home." His voice was steady despite his nerves. "Nora Bennett, from the moment I saw you standing brave and alone in Las Cruces, something inside me recognized you. Every day since then, that feeling has only grown stronger." Tears welled in Nora's eyes as she looked from the ring to Finn's face. "I know it hasn't been a full year since Thomas passed," Finn continued, "and I know that might make some people talk. But I also know that life is too short and too precious to waste on worrying about what others might say. I love you, Nora. I love Finnegan as if he were my own son. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" A tear slipped down Nora's cheek, but she was smiling. "When I was a girl, I dreamed of a love that would sweep me off my feet, that would make my heart race and my spirit soar. I thought I'd given up on that dream when I married Thomas. But then you gave me your horse and walked away, and something inside me woke up." She took his hand, closing his fingers around the ring. "Yes, Finn Xavier, I will marry you. Not because you saved me, not because you helped bring my son into this world, but because you make me feel alive in a way I never knew was possible." Finn slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that was both tender and passionate, a promise of all the love they would share in the years to come. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at the Santa Fe church. Nancy and George stood as witnesses, while little Finnegan, dressed in his finest clothes, was held by his proud new father. Some eyebrows were raised at the speed of the widow's remarriage, but Nora found she didn't care what anyone thought. She knew what she had found with Finn was rare and precious. After the ceremony, Finn helped Nora and Finnegan settle into the ranch house, which seemed to come alive with their presence. The rooms that had once echoed with Finn's solitary footsteps now rang with Finnegan's laughter and the gentle cadence of Nora's voice. Their first year together passed in a blur of joy and hard work. Finn taught Nora about ranch life, while she transformed the house into a true home. Finnegan took his first steps in the garden Nora had planted, toddling toward Finn with outstretched arms and a gummy smile. On Finnegan's first birthday, after the small party Nancy and George had attended had ended, Finn and Nora sat on their bench beneath the oak tree, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I have something to tell you," Nora said, leaning against her husband's solid shoulder. "What's that, my love?" Finn asked, his arm tightening around her. "Finnegan is going to be a big brother." She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "In about 7 months." Finn's face transformed with wonder and joy. "A baby! Our baby! Our baby!" Nora confirmed, laughing as Finn swept her into his arms, spinning her around beneath the oak tree. 6.5 months later, during a late autumn snowstorm, Nora gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. This time, Finn rode frantically to fetch the town midwife, returning just in time to witness his children's entry into the world. "What shall we name them?" the midwife asked, placing the swaddled infants in their parents' arms. Nora cradled her daughter while Finn held their son. They had discussed names but hadn't settled on any. "For our daughter, I was thinking of Fiona," Nora said, stroking the baby's downy cheek. "After her father." Finn's eyes misted over. "It's perfect. And for our son, what about Noah, after his brave and beautiful mother?" "Fiona and Noah Xavier." Nora tested the names, smiling tiredly. "Welcome to our family." Finnegan, now almost 2, was brought in by Nancy to meet his new siblings. He stared at the tiny bundles with wide-eyed fascination, then planted sloppy kisses on their foreheads at his mother's encouragement. As Nancy took Finnegan back to the kitchen for some pie, Finn sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still holding Noah. "Do you ever think about that day in Las Cruces?" he asked, gazing down at his son's tiny face. "How different our lives might be if that stagecoach driver had let you board." Nora adjusted Fiona in her arms, considering the question. "I used to think it was terrible luck, being refused a seat that day. Now I know it was the greatest blessing of my life." "Mine too," Finn agreed, leaning down to kiss her softly. "Though I suspect I would have found you somehow, Nora Xavier. Some things are simply meant to be." The twins thrived, and the Xavier Ranch prospered. Finn's reputation for breeding fine horses spread throughout the territory, bringing customers from as far away as California. Thunder, the horse that had brought them together, lived out his days in pampered retirement, teaching each of the Xavier children to ride. 5 years after the twins were born, Nora gave birth to another son, whom they named Thomas George, honoring both Nora's first husband and her brother-in-law. By then, the Xavier Ranch had doubled in size, with Finn employing several hands to help manage the expanding operation. In the summer of 1885, 7 years after that fateful day in Las Cruces, the Xavier family traveled to Santa Fe for the territorial fair. Finn's horses were featured attractions, with Thunder's offspring winning several competitions. 8-year-old Finnegan, who had inherited his stepfather's way with horses, proudly led one of the yearlings in the children's showcase. During the fair, Nora spotted a familiar face in the crowd, the stagecoach driver who had refused her passage all those years ago. He was older now, his mustache fully gray, but she recognized him immediately. "Wait here," she told Finn, handing him 5-year-old Thomas's hand. With the twins flanking her, she approached the old driver. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely. "I believe we've met before." The driver looked at her blankly, then at the twins, then back at her face. "I don't recall, madam. Las Cruces, 1878. You refused to let me board your stage because I was with child." There was no accusation in her voice, only a calm statement of fact. Recognition dawned in the old man's eyes, followed by embarrassment. "I'm sorry about that, madam. Company policy at the time." "I wanted to thank you," Nora said, surprising him. "Thank me," he repeated, bewildered. "If you had let me board that stage, I never would have met my husband." She gestured toward Finn, who stood watching with little Thomas. "I never would have had these beautiful children, never would have found the happiness I have now." The driver's weathered face softened. "Well, I'll be. Guess sometimes things work out for the best, don't they?" "They certainly do," Nora agreed, smiling as Finn approached, curiosity evident on his face. That night, after the children were asleep in their hotel room, Nora told Finn about her encounter with the driver. "You thanked him?" Finn asked incredulously. "After how he treated you?" Nora snuggled closer to her husband in their bed. "How could I not? His refusal led me to you, to us, to everything we have." Finn pulled her closer, marveling at the woman in his arms. "You continue to amaze me, Nora Xavier. Just when I think I couldn't possibly love you more, you prove me wrong." "Is that so?" Nora teased, tracing the line of his jaw with her finger. "And how exactly do I amaze you, Mr. Xavier? Your kindness, your strength." Finn captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "The way you can forgive someone who wronged you because you see the greater picture." "I learned that from you," Nora said softly. "The day you gave your beloved horse to a stranger in need, asking nothing in return. You taught me what true generosity looks like." "Best decision I ever made," Finn murmured against her lips before claiming them in a passionate kiss. As the years passed, the Xavier Ranch became one of the most respected in the New Mexico territory. Finnegan grew into a fine young man, with his mother's kind heart and his stepfather's affinity for horses. When he turned 18, Finn officially adopted him, though everyone had considered him a Xavier from the beginning. The twins developed their own distinct personalities, Fiona becoming a skilled horsewoman with dreams of breeding horses like her father, while Noah showed an aptitude for business and numbers that would later serve the ranch well. Young Thomas, the quietest of the four, revealed a talent for storytelling, often entertaining the family with tales he'd created about the ranch and its inhabitants. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Finn surprised Nora with a trip back to Las Cruces. They left the ranch in Finnegan's capable hands and took the train south. "Why Las Cruces?" Nora asked as they settled into their private compartment. "I thought we might revisit where our story began," Finn replied, taking her hand. "The town's changed a lot in 20 years. I thought it might be nice to see it together." Las Cruces had indeed transformed from the dusty town Nora remembered. New buildings lined the main street, and the stagecoach stop had been replaced by a proper train station. Yet when they stood on the spot where Finn had first offered Thunder to a desperate pregnant widow, both felt the same flutter of emotion they'd experienced that day. "I was so afraid," Nora admitted, looking up at her husband. His hair had streaks of silver now, and lines fanned from the corners of his eyes, but he was still the most handsome man she'd ever known. Afraid of giving birth alone, afraid of what would become of my baby and me. And I was afraid you wouldn't accept my help, Finn replied, his arm around her waist. Afraid you'd think I had dishonorable intentions. Instead, you turned out to be the most honorable man I've ever known. Nora reached up to touch his cheek. Do you remember what you said to me that day? Finn smiled down at her. No such thing as too much kindness, madam, especially not for a lady in your circumstance. You remember? Nora's eyes shone with love and memory. I remember everything about that day, Finn assured her. The way the sun made your hair shine like copper. The determined set of your chin when that driver refused you. The trust in your eyes when you took thunder's reins. They spent 3 days in Las Cruces, visiting the places that had played a role in their meeting. On their final evening, they found a small restaurant that hadn't existed 20 years earlier and enjoyed a quiet dinner. I've been thinking, Finn said as they lingered over coffee. Finnegan's practically running the horse breeding operation on his own now. The twins will be finishing school next year. Maybe it's time we took a step back, let the children take on more responsibility. What are you suggesting? Nora asked, curious. Not retirement, Finn clarified quickly. I'm not that old yet, but maybe travel. See some of the places we've only read about. San Francisco, Chicago, maybe even New York or Europe. Nora considered the idea. She'd never been farther east than Santa Fe. I think I'd like that, though I'd miss the children and the ranch terribly. We wouldn't go forever, Finn assured her. Just long enough to have some adventures of our own. We started our life together with an adventure after all. We certainly did, Nora laughed. Not many couples can say their courtship began with a 3-day ride through Apache territory and the delivery of a baby. Exactly, Finn grinned. So what do you say, Mrs. Xavier? Are you up for a few more adventures with an old cowboy? There's nothing I'd like more, Nora replied, raising her coffee cup in a toast. To adventures past and future. To us, Finn added, clinking his cup against hers. They returned to their ranch renewed and excited about the future. The children embraced the idea of their parents' travels, with Finnegan confidently asserting that he and his siblings could manage the ranch in their absence. Over the next decade, Finn and Nora embarked on several journeys to California, where they saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, to Chicago for the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, and even to New York City, where they attended the opera and marveled at the towering buildings. Between trips, they returned to the ranch, which thrived under the shared management of their children. Finnegan married a local girl and built a house on the property. The twins pursued their respective passions, Fiona taking over the horse breeding program, Noah managing the business aspects of the ranch. Thomas left for college in Denver but returned during summers and holidays, filling notebooks with stories inspired by ranch life. In 1898, as Finn and Nora celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and friends, Nora found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "What are you thinking about, my love?" Finn asked, finding her alone on their bench beneath the oak tree after the festivities had wound down. "About how life's hardest moments sometimes lead to its greatest joys," she replied, making room for him beside her. "When Thomas died and I found myself alone and pregnant, I thought my life was over. Then a stagecoach driver refused me passage, and a kind cowboy gave me his horse." Finn took her hand, his thumb brushing over the silver and sapphire ring she still wore. "Best decision I ever made." "For both of us," Nora agreed, resting her head on his shoulder as they watched the sunset paint the sky in the same vibrant colors they'd admired for 3 decades. "You know what Finnegan told me today?" Finn asked after a comfortable silence. "What's that?" "He said that when he was little, before we were married, he used to pray every night that I would be his father someday." Finn's voice was thick with emotion. "He said he knew, even at that young age, that we belonged together." "That boy always was wise beyond his years," Nora said, blinking back tears. "Must have gotten it from his mother," Finn teased gently. As darkness fell over the Xavier ranch, the couple remained on their bench, hands intertwined, hearts still as connected as they had been that day in Las Cruces, when a pregnant woman in need had met a cowboy with a kind heart. Finnegan found them there an hour later, having come to check on them when they didn't return to the house. They were sitting close together, Nora's head on Finn's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both gazing up at the star-filled New Mexico sky. "Mom, Dad," Finnegan called softly. "Everyone's wondering where you disappeared to." Finn looked up at the son of his heart, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Just reminiscing, son. Your mother and I were recalling how our story began. With a pregnant woman refused a seat on a stage, and a cowboy who gave her his horse and walked," Finnegan recited, having heard the story countless times throughout his life. "The best love stories often begin with kindness," Nora said, rising from the bench with Finn's assistance. "Remember that, Finnegan, when you're telling our grandchildren about their grandparents someday." "I will, Mom," Finnegan promised, offering his arm to escort his mother back to the house. "Though I doubt any love story will ever quite compare to yours." As they walked toward the warmly lit house, where laughter and conversation could be heard through the open windows, Finn caught Nora's eye over their son's head. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. "For what?" She mouthed back, her eyes crinkling with the smile that still made his heart race after 30 years. "For everything," Finn replied, his gesture encompassing the ranch, their family, and the lifetime they had built together, all because a pregnant woman needed help, and a cowboy offered the only thing he had to give.